steady away. Just nothing like going sideways down a mountain pass. Hello and welcome back to a chilly Automotive Tales. On today's episode, we're doing our usual winter stunt. We are off skiing and we've got a hire car. We've got a hire car with 600 kilometres on the odometer. So join us as we review a Toyota Corolla Sport Wagon, I think it's called, but my first drive of a hybrid car. Today's test car is, of course, the fastest car in the world. It is a hire car, and we're collecting it from the provincial airport in Salzburg, which, if you haven't flown into, is really quite spectacular, hence the time lapse. Car collected, and we've got about an hour and a half drive up to the ski resort in Saalbach-Hinterglemm. So time to get used to this Toyota Corolla Sport Touring and to enjoy some beautiful snowy views. Well, we sort of failed at the first hurdle because there isn't a ski hatch. So this is going to be interesting with 4 people in. Hello and welcome back to Automotive Tales. You join me in the Toyota Corolla Touring Sports in sports mode as we're just trying to pull out of a junction, and I'm going to tell you what this car is like to drive. So we've had it for a week for skiing and so far so good. Right, let's see what it's like off the line. Oh, I tell you what, that's got some go. Now, if you can hear the engine noise behind my voice, you'll hear the first thing I want to talk about with this car. So we are in the new 2-litre version of the Toyota Corolla, which has the CVT gearbox, just like the older 1.8. This 2-litre, however, comes in with a whopping 196 horsepower and 140 foot-pounds of torque, which means this really does go with the combination of that petrol engine and the EV motor that goes with it, because this is a hybrid. Fun fact for you, Salzburg Airport, you pick your car up from Christian Doppler Platz. Christian Doppler came up with the Doppler effect. Don't know what that is? Go and look it up. So what does that mean for day-to-day driving? Well, if you've never had a CVT before, which means a constantly variable transmission, what it means is you've effectively got an automatic car to drive every day, but instead of having 2, 3, 4, however many gears automatic cars have these days, some I think have 7 gears, and you can feel it going through the rev range, changing gear, going through the rev range, changing gear. This doesn't do that. A constantly variable transmission has an infinite number of gear ratios between an upper and a lower limit, which ultimately means it will pick the best revs for the speed, which takes some getting used to. So you'll be used to an engine note rising as you accelerate and then dropping as you change gear. This car, with this gearbox, means the engine note will rise to a certain level and it will sit there, even though the speed continues to increase. Effectively, it's a complicated version of a torque converter. But that does mean it's not as intuitive to drive as you might think. It sometimes sounds like the clutch is slipping or even the wheels are spinning because the revs are high and they're not changing. So why isn't the car, slowing down, or why is it surging in speed? Well, that's because the CVT is doing its thing. However, you can take it out of sport mode into economy mode, where it drops in between driving on the petrol engine and driving in full EV mode, which is very nice for round and about town. And you can override that switch over to some extent with a full EV mode. In the eco mode, it will tend to drop to the petrol engine with anything other than the very lightest squeeze of the accelerator pedal. If you want to be able to accelerate up to sort of 30 miles an hour or 40, 50 kilometers an hour without it tripping into engine mode and then the engine turning off straight away when you back off, then EV mode is the one for you. If you squeeze that pedal too hard, though, it will still trip onto the engine. One thing definitely worth a mention, it's -5. I've literally just got in the car, and this touchscreen is perfectly operational. Normally when they're cold, they're really, really slow to react. This one is really good. What else is there to know about this Toyota Corolla Touring Sport? Well, being a touring, it is obviously an estate vehicle. It is a 5-seater and a fairly practical one at that. I think it's got mid to high boot capacity for the range of vehicle. We've had 4 people with skis and snowboards in here for our ski trip, and it's been just fine. Now, if you were taking 4 people with luggage and skis and boards, then it might not be quite so great. So we've had to use the split rear seats, put the single seat down, which means the fourth passenger has had to sit in this middle seat here, which is a little bit small. However, we have a small person in amongst our ski party, our snowboarder, so that hasn't been too much of a problem for us. In addition to the reasonably good sized boot, if you lift the boot floor, in this model certainly there is no spare wheel. That means that there's a huge cavernous space where you can store things like your shopping, luggage, spare jackets, whatever you might want to put there. However, if you were doing some cross-European touring, which is what the name suggests you might wish to do, then I would suggest a spare wheel just in case. So it is about -8 in the car, and there are a few things in this Toyota that I really appreciate when it's like this. First of all, as you can see, I've got my gloves on because it's bloody freezing, and there are some nuclear grade heated seats, and the button is a big fat button in the center console, which means I can turn them on with my gloves on. And the same goes for the heated steering wheel button, which is down to the left hand side of the steering wheel, so that I can get the steering wheel nice and warm and take the gloves off. I like that feature. In our Volvo V60, well, there is no heated steering wheel, but the heated seats are under glass. So if you're wearing big, thick gloves, you can't turn the heated seats on, which is really annoying. On the subject of wheels and tyres, obviously we are in a hire car. We are in Austria in January, which means it's a legal requirement for the hire company to give me winter tyres. So I haven't got snow tyres, but I have got winter tyres, and that makes this car relatively capable in the snow. One problem with this CVT gearbox, it does mean you can't select and lock a particular gear, which does really limit your ability for engine braking. Now when you're driving down quite a steep hill in the snow, that can be quite useful because jabbing the brake pedal can send the car all over the place. Ask me how I know. Right, part 2. Let's go and give this a drive. So I'm going to start off with selecting full EV mode, so it's going to be nice and quiet as we pull away. Right, let's just make sure we're not going to hit any moose or any other vehicles coming up and down this mountain pass. Here we go. Ooh, a little bit of wheel spin there because it's a little bit snowy. But it seems quite happy in EV mode. I'm right at the top end of what it's going to allow me to do in EV mode, but we are pulling up one heck of a gradient. You probably can't quite tell from the video. So it's straight away now tripped into petrol engine mode because we'd used up all the battery going up this really steep hill already. It has got quite a short life on the battery. It's only designed to do a few miles in reality. We've had, I think, about 6 or 7 miles out of it doing really slow movement in traffic. But I have already come partway up the hill on the battery, which is why it's already tripped. We are squirming around a little bit, but it seems to be taking it in its stride. It's really quite gorgeous up here. Right, now we are on to snow. Just hard-packed snow. Hopefully there's nothing coming the other way. No, it seems to be coping all right. The one thing that is going to be a little bit of a problem with this, and I might not go too much further, is because it has that CVT, I do not have selectable gears. And I've already noticed in some driving we've been doing while we're here, that what that means is when you're coming back down the mountain, you can't slot it into gear and use some engine braking. So we've got a split in the road here. I'm just going to do a quick U-turn. I don't want to go too far up because I actually don't trust it driving back down again. One slightly annoying thing about the Toyota though is this little key, which I can't focus on. So you notice it's got a lock, unlock, but otherwise no other buttons. So you need to push the button to unlock it, which bearing in mind it's -14 outside, that's quite impressive. And then other than that, you just stick it in your pocket and it's contactless to start the car. Now, that's kind of great, but why couldn't it be contactless to unlock the car? Now, I know I'm kind of get used to these modern features, and complaining it doesn't have this weird modern feature is a bit ridiculous. But when you're skiing, you've got this rooted somewhere very, very safe. You've then got to basically declobber in the freezing cold to find the key, to push the button, to put it back away again, to not need it until you get back out again. So if you could start the car without putting the key in, then maybe you could unlock the car without putting the key in. So just as a proximity key, that would be quite useful. I mean, it's a first world problem, it's for skiing, but, you know. So I've got winter tyres on. Applying the brakes, it seems okay. It has been a bit squirmy in previous days when we've had fresh snow on the ground. Without being able to select a gear, the lack of engine braking is a bit of a problem. So you've got to rely on the brakes a bit more than I would like to in these conditions. So not ideal for driving in the snow, but I expect 90% of the people in the UK that buy this car are not going to have that problem. But as it happens, we're in a ski resort, we've got snow, we might as well test it properly. Oh, cattle grid. Right, let's see how it goes.
A few moments later.
Whoa. Just nothing like going sideways down a mountain pass, and that's where the problem kicks in. So I applied a little bit of brakes there just to slow us down, and of course there's just no grip whatsoever, and because I can't select a gear to hold the revs down, I can't slow the vehicle down very effectively. All right, I'm just going to pull back into this little bay here. Time for me to change my trousers, because that went very, very sideways while coming downhill. So what about the toys and gadgets and gizmos? Well, we've got a dashboard here that is full of information. Instead of having a rev counter, I've got a gauge that sort of tells me whether I'm in charge mode, which we are now because we're coasting, whether I'm in eco mode, which is a combination of EV and using the motor to, I was using the petrol motor to power the electric motor, or if you're in power mode, which is using the full petrol engine through the CVT gearbox. On top of that, you've got your normal speedo. It tells you what's playing on the radio, all your information about speed limiters, etc, etc. But all of that does make for quite a cluttered dashboard. So unlike its competitor, the V60, although I know that's no longer available in the UK, but here in Europe it still is, that means there's a bit too much going on for my liking, and it can be very easy to get distracted by all the different bits of information it's telling you. I would rather have something like the V60 with a heads-up display that gives you just the basic information: your speed, the speed limit of the area you're travelling in, and the next direction on your sat-nav, which would be very useful. So while you enjoy some more of this stunning mountain pass, I just thought I would say that all the facts and figures here came from a What Car magazine. That's right, proper paper press magazine. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle like this Toyota Corolla, I would suggest going and grabbing a copy of What Car, turn to the back and go through all the facts and figures, find out what car's right for you. On the subject of screens, so we do have the usual touchscreen infotainment system, which you get in all modern cars. It's not as offensive as some others. It's a relatively small screen, and it's very responsive. So I've been using this screen from the get-go at -8 so far on this ski trip, and there's no lag whatsoever on the screen, which is great. However, that's not actually a problem even if it did have lag, because one thing this car has in abundance that you don't get in other cars in this range is buttons. And that might sound like a strange thing to say, but when you are in a cold environment and you want to put your gloves on and you want to get in the car when it's -8, or as it's going to be tonight, -10, you want to be able to activate certain things with gloves on, and therefore being under glass is not ideal. So you've got some key functions in here for winter driving. It has a heated steering wheel. This bit you can see on the camera here is all heated on both sides, not the bit around the top, but then you should be holding your wheel at 10 to 2 anyway. And it has heated seats, and the heated seats are like they're nuclear grade heated seats. On high mode, it will almost burn your back. It's amazing, which after a day on the slopes, I can tell you is very much appreciated. In addition to that, all of your climate control is on buttons, which is great. Although oddly, the volume control is push buttons for up, push button for down underneath the touchscreen rather than a dial. A dial for the volume would be nice if you want to just quickly turn it down to have a conversation. But we're talking minor details here. Generally speaking, the inside is quite nicely appointed. Nothing rattles, as you would expect from a Toyota. And everything is right where you want it. There's a lot of buttons on the steering wheel, which is a little bit cluttered, but I do prefer that to the Volkswagen thing with like touch buttons on the steering wheel. That can get in the sea. And everything is sort of standard Toyota fare from there. Externally, the styling is a little bit interesting. It's got that kind of Lexus vibe with pointy out bits, and I'll do some external shots so you can see that. Not really my cup of tea, but not an offensive design by any stretch, given the sorts of things you see on the roads today. So all in all, with 4 people, skis and snowboards in useful buttons for driving in ski weather. Certainly as a hire car for going on a week's shooshing down the slopes, this has been fantastic. And would I want to live with it every day? Yeah, I think I probably would. The CVT takes a little bit of getting used to, but I like the ability to drop in and out of the electric mode. And on top of all of that, it's quite a nice car. It's quite affordable as well. So despite this being the 2-litre, which is the 196 horsepower model versus the earlier 1.8, it still returns exactly the same MPG. So between 60 and 62, depending on which trim spec you've got. I can only presume that difference in MPG is down to more ancillaries drawing more power or something like that. But yeah, generally speaking, you're looking at around 62 miles to the gallon, which is pretty impressive. The only thing that comes close is, oddly, the diesel Skoda Octavia 150 PS, which claims around the 60 mpg, but I don't know if that's a hybrid like this is. So in and around town, it might not be quite as consistently good on mileage as this would be. So yeah, I think generally speaking, this is quite a good car. And what great timing, because this is now my turning into Wehofen and back up to the chalet. Right, that's all from me for this episode of Automotive Tales. I hope you've enjoyed this little whistle-stop tour of the Toyota Corolla Touring Sports 2-litre CVT. And check back to the channel next time for less car reviews and more general automotive nonsense. Right, that's all from me. Bye! It's left here, right? Yes. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.